Hello, Augsburg University baseball alumni. Coach Bateman here, coming to you from Bateman Estates in beautiful Arden Hills, Minnesota, with another edition of Alumni Stories. Now, this week's story comes to us from a 2008 graduate, Bryan Ludwig. And Luda was actually part of my first recruiting class. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, and I guess some could say that might still be the case. Um, but Daryl Weiss was really involved in recruiting. Bryan was a football, baseball guy and ended up to be just a great alum and had a nice career as an Augie. So we're going to go through Bryan Ludwig's story. Now, remember, Ludwig's a smart guy, so there's going to be some words in here that aren't my own because they're probably pretty smart. So just stick with me here. All right, here we go. Luda starts. I do not have the benefit of recency to draw on here, but one of the things that stuck out most to me when reflecting on my time in Maroon was how the Augsburg baseball brand changed almost overnight. As a young first year Augie, I distinctly remember the days of loading L screens and hitting socks into TK's truck to head down to Fort Snelling or Parade for practice, and even finding our way over to Matthews Park from time to time when we couldn't get on Parade. Now, side story from that, and there could be a couple side stories on this one. That's incredibly true. Thank goodness we had Tyler Kraft there early on in my career. We're talking 2004, 5, 6, 7, and his pickup truck, because we couldn't store our equipment anywhere. And so I bought all these screens, the hitting socks and all that stuff to use in the dome, not really knowing that we didn't have anywhere to put it once the dome came down. So what we would do is we would load up TK's pickup truck, throw equipment on top of it. I think sometimes guys would just ride in the back of the truck. Usually we would go down to Matthews Park for practice, and I have a great Matthews Park story that I'll have to get to at some point in time. But yes, TK's truck was loaded, and we were ready to go just wherever we could go for practice that day. All right, we'll keep going here. I remember the days of sharing a locker room with all the spring sports and spring football before getting our own space in 2006, only to fill it up with a foosball table, giant stereo, and video game systems that we barely had room to move around. Yeah, and we did once we got that locker room, which was part of the Kennedy Center project, and Phil and Lynn Grunseth, and Lynn, if you're watching this, hi to you. Really helped us build a locker room just for baseball, so we didn't have to share anymore. And then yeah, we filled it with some stuff, and even now it's a little outdated, but it's our space, and we have a spot to be. So we did kind of load that thing up. Um, Okay, back to the story. I remember having our 2005 Moorhead series with a trip to the MIAC tourney on the line at Dick Putt Stadium in St. Cloud because we got snowed out earlier in the year, only to sit through multiple rain delays because, of course, MIAC weather, a severely depleted between game snack bin. Yeah, that was that was my fault, but we should have got the bunt down, and hundreds of dollars in Diamond Dry to get the game in. Again, sidebar from this story, the Diamond Dry, so we had to get this game in. Last day of the year, playoff spot for both of us, for both Concordia and us, were on the line. And so Coach Bergal from Concordia came over to the dugout and said, hey, they can throw Diamond Dry down, but it's going to be like, I think it was like $60 per team for the bags of Diamond Dry. And I go, yep, whatever. Well, man, they start throwing all this Diamond Dry out there. And I was yelling at them, man, at least take care of the bags so I can take those back because this is getting expensive. We did end up winning and going to the MIAC tournament, so that was a positive. Anyway, Ludwig, I remember watching from the bullpen as we made a run to the MIAC championship game. I remember thinking that this was it. The program would be back there every year. I remember switching the spring trip from Florida to Arizona. I saw the birth of the Kennedy Center, the purchase of a new dome with space and cages for us, the installation of new turf on the football field, the addition of the weight room, and so many other things that elevated the program on almost a daily basis. We never did return to the tournament in my remaining years, but the realization I've come to over time is that while I remember some of these things vividly, the stuff I remember most is how it felt to be an Augie. The bonds I built with my teammates and coaches, the love for the game that I gained from my time in Maroon. The joy I felt when I put on the maroon and gray can never be replicated. And that brings me to what being an Augie means to me. Happiness, it seems, is not found at the end of the journey when we walk off the field for the last time, but in the stops we have along the way and the imprints they leave. People forget scores, records, and stats. What they will remember is the way Augies hustle, the poise we have, and the class we show. Wow, that's pretty solid, Luda, man. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you. And for everybody out there watching too, man, Luda really parlayed baseball into a career after his Augsburg career. Still does some rehab catching for the Minnesota Twins. He's done some bullpen stuff for them. I mean, he is really he does catching. Um, Catching clinics, has done some coaching. I mean, this guy has really kept his hand in the game, run his own amateur team. They did win the state tournament, took him from kind of maybe a Sunday league team to power in Class A amateur baseball in Minnesota. So just a real baseball guy and a great alum, and I always appreciate him. So I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope the family is all healthy and well. I can't wait to see you out at Parade in the future, and go Augies.